The proponents of this funding tout this funding as necessary to increase taxpayer services. That being the case, only $3 2/10 billion of that funding was dedicated to taxpayer support. Would the lopsided nature of the IRS funding create a taxpayer service funding cliff with customer service money running dry before enforcement funding?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In fact, if you look at President Biden's budget from earlier this year that includes the IRA money as well as the discretionary IRS budget, they've got taxpayer services and technology upgrades sort of increasing for a year or two and then dropping, which makes absolutely no sense. I mean, on technology upgrades, I think we all favor, major IRS technology upgrades. There's obviously going to be an increased demand in the future for those upgrades. So I think there ought to be either should be a bipartisan compromise here to at least move the IRS extra enforcement money back to customer service and IT upgrades. Again, I think that's a win-win, whereas enforcement is always a win-lose for the economy, it seems to me.
I've heard liberal pundits claim that anyone who's not a tax cheat has nothing to worry about from increased IRS enforcement. Mr. Edwards, they say even if an audit results in no additional tax due, a taxpayer can spend countless hours, incur significant costs, and experience what you refer to as collateral damage in an audit that finds no wrongdoing. Can you discuss the cost and burden an IRS audit imposes on even innocent taxpayers?
The way I look at IRS auditing and enforcement is that it's a leaky budget. It's not just, you don't just hire more IRS agents and get a big return for the government. There's many misses, as we discussed. There's many returns where there's no change. So you've subjected businesses to massive headaches and extra time hiring accountants, and there's no change. The IRS loses half the time in tax court, and even when there's a study I cite in my testimony that IRS auditing actually there's an interesting study where they causes more businesses to go bankrupt after they are audited, and some of those businesses are cheating for sure, but there is this collateral damage. There's negative, as an economist would say, deadweight loss to the economy from the increased enforcement.
Let's look at this tax gap, Mr. Edwards, of $625 billion. We've heard from some who believe the tax gap is substantially greater and that the IRS estimates are below the true number. However, there are reasons to believe that the IRS tax gap estimate may be overstated. Even though IRS loses nearly half the time at tax court, as you just said, the IRS's methodology for measuring the tax gap includes upward adjustments that are recommended by frontline examiners but reversed by administrative appeal or judicial review. Doesn't this suggest that the tax gap, which Democrats have used to justify increased enforcement, may be overstated?
I think that's right. I think that I've read Professor Sarin's work. It's excellent. It's very interesting. But the IRS just came out with their new tax gap report last month, and it says our tax gap is about the same as it's been for decades as a share of GDP. I think the IRS uses a very good methodology. They start with something called the National Research Program, which is this broad measure of random auditing, and then they take the unreported income there and they multiply by 3 to get a picture of the universe of the errors and cheating. And I think that's a pretty good methodology. And I think the IRS tax gap measure is pretty good.
Dearest friends, I have good news to share with you today. More checks are being sent out right now. You may qualify for at least one more stimulus check this year. And multiple states have approved new legislation that includes tax rebates and inflation relief payments for low-income households. Many Americans will be able to claim checks ranging from $200 to over $1,000. My dear friends, can you please do me a big favor and watch until the end of this video to find out if you are eligible. Also, every Friday, I will be announcing several winners for the Walmart gift card giveaway. If you would like to enter these weekly giveaway, friends, All you have to do is click and like several of my videos, and then comment below the keyword of each video that you watch. The more videos that you comment on, the greater your chances, friends, of winning these giveaways. According to local officials, have you received a seemingly unfamiliar check from a company you do not recognize? Before discarding it, you may want to take a closer look at it and see if it's a legitimate check. Because earlier this year, the Minnesota legislature approved one-time tax rebate checks for individuals earning $75,000 or less, and couples with an annual income of $100,000 or $50,000 or less. These checks are issued by Submittable Holdings in Missoula, Montana. The Minnesota Department of Revenue has explained that the state enlisted this company due to the concurrent property tax refund season. Managing both property tax refunds and rebate checks simultaneously posed resource challenges, leading the department to use external assistance. So if you filed your taxes electronically with banking information on record, you can expect a direct deposit. Otherwise, you may want to sift through potentially overlooked mail. Over 150,000 checks that were issued in September are on the verge of expiration. To address this, the state plans to reissue checks in 2 phases around the 15th of this month and early December. So efforts are underway to contact eligible residents who have not cashed their checks. Notably, some individuals return checks due to personal beliefs, while others may have missed theirs, especially if they've recently moved. The Department of Revenue reassures residents that opportunities to claim their rebates are not closing. So even if you discarded the check as junk mail, there is still a chance your funds can still reach you. Qualifying individuals earning $75,000 or less were entitled to a $260 check, while eligible couples making $150,000 or less receive $520. Additionally, parents in these groups were allocated $260 per child, up to 3 children, amounting to a total of $1,300. The state of Montana is also rolling out tax rebates, and they will be landing both on mailboxes and accounts for residents. Since Montana is a Republican-controlled state, there is a legislature aimed at individuals that is worth millions of dollars. In total, we are talking about $889 million towards both income and property tax rebates. Governor Greg Gianforte was the one who signed this legislation, and these rebates are on the way towards homeowners this fall. If you were a Montana resident over the past full year, and you paid your state taxes both on 2021 and 2022, you will be receiving a rebate that will be worth up to $675. If you meet the requirements but you paid less than $1,250 in 2022, you will have your entire payment refunded. This $1,250 cap does not apply to taxpayers who filed as single taxpayers. Married couples who filed together will be eligible for up to double that same amount. Montana is not the only state that will be receiving these single tax rebate payments during this autumn. The state of Alabama is expected to soon begin sending tax rebates of $150 for individuals and $300 for couples. Nearly 2 million residents of the state who filed 2021 tax returns will receive this money if the Department of Revenue has their banking information. Otherwise, the checks will be mailed to their addresses. The rebates are meant to partially offset sales taxes that residents paid on grocery taxes that contributed to a surplus in the state's education trust fund. These rebates are a one-time tax credit, but residents will benefit from lower taxes going forward. According to the legislation that created the tax credits, the Department of Revenue cannot begin issuing them until November 30th, 2023. So, dearest friends, please be sure to check if your state or city is currently providing extra relief payments to its residents. Well, my magnificent and most marvelous friends, That is the end of my daily stimulus update video for today. Thank you very, very much, friends, for being part of this community. Happy Veterans Day to all of you. Thank you and have a wonderful and very blessed weekend.